Hello, everyone. I am so excited for today. I have my dear friend, Sheryl Tullis, that I've known for ages from Microsoft. We were in the central marketing group, and Sheryl was a chief of staff for our CMO, Mitch Matthews, back then. And gosh, there's so many more ways I could introduce her. She's also been a client of mine, but the most important one is she's a dear friend and mentor. So without further ado, over to Sheryl, and I let her do her deeper introduction to tell you more about her and her background. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Bobby, and thank you, everybody who is listening to this. I'm excited to be here because from the moment Bobby started talking to me about the respect quotient, I was excited and just thought it filled such a need and a gap out there today. So to be part of it and watch it develop and now to be able to talk about it is just very heartwarming to me. Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you. You know what? I feel both of us are emotional right now, and I think it's very fair to be open about it with everyone watching because truly, yeah, I'm so grateful for you being instrumental in my arriving at this framework. But yeah, please do introduce yourself a bit about your career. You have tremendous accomplishments, starting with West Point, but please toot your horn.
Yeah, I'd say that my career has really been about challenging boundaries from the very start. I mean, going to West Point and graduating in the first decade of women graduates was a journey within itself. And then I was lucky enough to be commissioned as an officer in the Army's Information Services, and I served overseas in Germany for 4 years in the Directorate of Information Management. So I learned a lot about global teams and also about just high tech future forward communication systems. I transitioned out of the military to Procter and Gamble and did brand management there. And one of the things I was able to do is pioneer one of their very first e-commerce brands. And that meant stringing together an extranet of vendors and just figuring it out, building it from the ground up. At Microsoft, I was responsible for product strategy for SQL Server, which was $1 billion business. And I helped lead worldwide marketing capabilities for the 7,700 marketers at the time, leadership development. And as you said, I served as chief of staff and speechwriter for the CMO. And that was a really interesting way to see how strategy gets made at the top and to build perspective on what it takes to lead. After Microsoft, I held some leadership roles at creative agencies and helped produce some award-winning campaigns for some major brands. And then I switched to a private equity firm that had a portfolio of companies, and I operated as the chief marketing officer, advising and operating marketing shared services within those brands. And then I took a side turn and left corporate life, and I recently co-founded a bike shop in the mountains east of Seattle. And we sought out to flip the traditional model of the bicycle industry with the goal to help more people get out and enjoy the great outdoors. And I'll talk about that a bit more later.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to the depth of the impact you've had and what you've created. So, I'd love you to define respect. And these are short conversations, and I'm asking that question of everyone. But if you're open to it, I just on the spot thought about this. One of the data points I'm very intrigued by from MIT Sloan, the cost of toxic culture is literally $50 billion per year just in the US. So if you're open to it with all this vast experience, both corporate and entrepreneurial, how about taking that angle on defining respect, if you're open to that?
Well, my view of respect is that it's the ability to communicate and solve problems with colleagues, even when they disagree, and understanding the value that each other brings to the table. I think toxic culture is the opposite of that. It's not valuing each other. It's not being able to communicate when you disagree. It's not being able to band together and solve problems and go toward a common goal. For me, it feels like that others are seeing the value in my contributions and my skills and my perspective, and I'm included in key discussions and decisions. And I listened to the interview with Brooke Ludwig and I think she talked about this need to be seen. And that's huge, I think, for everybody. They need to be seen and respected for what they bring to the party.
Oprah Winfrey, when she closed the 25-year show, it was the only time she did a monologue. And here's what she said. She said she spoke to 30,000 people, from the topmost celebrities to everyday folks. Every single one of them had asked for what Cheryl is saying, which is validation. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Does what I say matter to you?
I love that. And, I see it every day in the bike shop that I co-founded. So we started out as mountain bike enthusiasts who just saw this gap in the industry, but it wasn't approachable to new people in the sport. The demographics were very homogenous, and we sought to reduce those barriers. So, not needing to buy expensive equipment, not needing to have the skills already, not knowing where to ride or having people to ride with, and just meeting people where they are and understanding that everybody has to start somewhere and not talking down to those people is a start of it. So when people come into the shop, we make everybody feel welcome. There's no bro speak, there's limited jargon, there's no overselling. We ask questions to understand them instead of pitching the latest tech or the latest bike. And so understanding people's goals and explaining everything at the level that they want to engage, like not over explaining, not under explaining, not assuming what they want to hear. And I see this play out every day with the staff, and our Google reviews really show those results because it's 100% 5 stars. People always talk about respecting who they are, where they are, how they want to ride.
So you're really bringing the science of all that work you've done into the humanity of what it's like to be face to face. And let me add this too and get your perspective on it. It's been my experience since COVID where customer service and satisfaction has just dropped just about every category. Companies have been short staffed. I mean, aren't able to, fill roles and have enough agents on the floor, et cetera. But I'm very observant of how I feel the experience can be different, be it an airline, a grocery store. So yeah, your retail experience, I mean, because sorry, actually, to correct that, you're in an experiential business.
That's
You're
right.
not in a retail business.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
it's
and
much selling things is in service of the experience, so it is different.
exactly. But yeah, so have you seen that reflected back in the reviews around? It's such a refreshing change, right, for your approach to how you're caring for people, your customers.
I have seen it, and I think one review nailed it, which is that our employees seem happy. And I think happy employees are at the base of good customer service. So when employees feel respected and valued at work, they make the customers feel valued and respected.
The other brand that just came to mind, and I love your thoughts on it, is Trader Joe's. I love walking in Trader Joe's for the employees. I mean, I love their food and things I buy there, but just, like my wife says, they're always stocking. So there's always staff putting things on the shelves,
Right.
restocking. Um, and I actually don't mind that in that environment. In another store where I just go do that transactional, go pick up milk, and there's a big cart in front of me where somebody's filling up shelves, that gets me annoyed. But at Trader Joe's, it's like, oh yeah, thank you. I mean, I need that item and you're restocking it. Thank you. Do you see that compare and contrast?
Oh, totally. I have the best conversations with the checkout clerks. They'll look at what I'm buying, and most people are trained not to comment on what you buy, but they're like, "Oh, I made that the other day, and I used this," and or "How are you going to use that?" And they ask me questions to learn about me, and so it's just really fun to go in. And I love the Hawaiian shirts. I mean, it's great.
Exactly. Let's come back to the bike store though, Cheryl. So let's unpack that a bit more and tell us about what are those ingredients that are making this success and those employees showing up the way they are. And yeah,
Well, I talked a little bit about the demographics of the bike industry and especially off-road biking, mountain biking, and gravel biking. And, people have a view of it that it's like Red Bull Rampage is really extreme. But in reality, I mean, there's forest roads. It's just, it's just getting outside. And we wanted to enable that. So we purposely chose people who understood that dynamic of it, that it doesn't have to be about sending it off the biggest jumps. There's also a measure of respect that we're partnering with the tribes. The Snoqualmie tribe has something called the Ancestral Land Movement, and it's all about respecting the environment. So you're not out there conquering the mountain; you're out there to enjoy what resources we have. And so we also try to teach that to our customers that while you're out there, enjoy the ride, understand that you're moving through these ancient lands, the wildlife, and teaching that level of respectful recreation is built into everything we do. One other thing is we've tried to hire the best employees, and it so happens that all of our leads are female at the shop. And we have probably a 50-50 mix of women and men in the shop, and that's very different than most bike shops you'll walk into. And we also have a pretty good representation of ethnicities. So when people walk in and feel like there's somebody like them who can talk to them in their language, I think it makes that whole transaction smoother, but it also builds a relationship. And that's where we're trying to go with, we care about customer lifetime value, but we actually care about the customers for a lifetime.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, you remember in my Microsoft days, I, did a lot with segmentation and personas. And I'm wondering if you were to describe that successful employee you have now at the bike store, what would that persona be? How would you characterize that employee?
Want it to mirror our customer personas. So we have people who are core riders. That means they're enthusiasts and they're riding a certain number of times a month. Then we have recreational riders. We also have something called adjacent. So maybe one person in the family is a core rider and the other person kind of comes along. And often that person's needs are very different. And so we try to have employees who mirror those personas, but also aren't all about bikes. Like, it's really important that we have business leaders. It's really important that we have highly technical service leaders. And then when we hire our summer crew, most of them aren't going to go on for a career in the bike shop, but they bring like really amazing perspective in architecture, in being first responders, in all sorts of computer science fields. And that brings ideas into the team that's really amazing. We've had our summer crew on just for a few weeks now, and we've already made changes to operations. We've already added different clubs and social features. And when they feel like they can input and that their experience is respected just for who they are, then I think it really boosts the innovation in the company.
You're living intrinsic motivation. You're creating that space for your employees and your company culture to embrace and just practice those three things of intrinsic motivation: purpose, right, in terms of being connected to the experience of biking; autonomy, where they're really taking ownership and also contributing to the creativity of what you're doing; and mastery, where they're having fun doing what they do. And is that fair?
I love that model, purpose, autonomy, mastery, and it's definitely fair. And it's also just bring the fun. I mean, it's you want to go and work and have a great time, and what better than to work outside and be around bikes. I personally feel disrespected when I'm not included. So rather than some affront to me, it's when I'm not in the room, when my input's ignored or my value is discounted or my motivations are questioned. Honestly, it's easier for me to come to the defense of someone else than to defend myself. And sometimes I don't even have the presence of mind to do that in the moment for myself. In those situations, I try to circle back to the person and maybe replay the bit that bothered me and ask them to clarify. That's a good chance for me to, aside from the initial sting, to listen and not just feel hurt. And I love the part of the respect quotient that gives people agency to suggest a way to move forward. And I try to take that agency for myself to go back rather than stew on it. Be the best I can be. And then it's if a person has a problem with me, it could be about my gender, it could be about the color of my skin, it could be about anything. And then, that's then their problem. Because I'm doing my best. And so when I built like Women in Wireless, it was to help people be confident in their technical skills, to help people be confident in their business acumen, and help people be confident in their personal skills, so that if other people have a problem with them, they could still like keep their true north.
Cheryl, I'm curious if you have an example of, when you've been disrespected, and how do you handle that?
I've gotten better at it. Maybe not perfect, but I've learned to name it. So when I feel stung by a remark, I can say, ow, that stings a little, or harsh, is that how you feel? Or simply lean in with a, oh, say more. And that gives me time to recover, but also then puts the other person in the hot seat.
It's, staying in your power. We were talking about agency, because I believe the opposite often is people brush it aside. It's like, don't want to go there, don't want to get into conflict. Very respectful to the other, right? You're just naming what's happening for you, you're checking on where they are. Yeah, nice.
But I do have a story about the other things you mentioned where I failed at this. And I'd love your coaching on this. So the situation was we had just launched a groundbreaking $1 million program. And my main client added some team members to help us scale this up. So one of the newer guys from the client side stood at a whiteboard one time and proceeded to explain marketing to me in a very pedantic way for 15 or 20 minutes, suggesting I didn't know what I was doing, that I was doing it all wrong, that he had better ideas. And I had 15 years marketing experience at Fortune 50 companies at this point, so it felt very condescending to me, but he was a client. So I clenched my jaw. I tried to have some discourse with him until I realized he wasn't trying to arrive at a better situation together or a better outcome. He wanted to take control. And in that moment, I failed to respect him as well. I didn't make an effort to understand him more deeply. And I decided not to make waves, and I just let him feel like he was in charge, went along with him where appropriate, hoped he'd stay in his lane. Unfortunately, this wasn't the worst of his behavior. As part of trying to wrest control of the project, he accused me and my colleagues of everything from incompetence to dishonesty, and he did it directly to our key customers, our mutual key customers. Now, you can accuse me of screwing something up, and I'll own up to that, but you cannot question my integrity without riling me up. And so that's the most disrespectful thing to me. And I knew we were in the right. I knew we had the high ground, but I also knew he was souring the entire project to further his agenda. So we lost trust, and his name literally became an epithet in our team. And I'm not proud of that. Now, could I have handled the situation better? Most likely. It's clear we didn't bridge any divides with this person. Yeah, I thought last night about what I should have done differently, what I would do differently if I had the chance. And what clearly doesn't build that bridge is just playing along and rolling my eyes. So if I could do it over again, I'd definitely take him out to lunch and get to know him better and try to understand his background, his motivations, his aspirations. I mean, clearly he wanted to take power for a reason. He needed to be seen as something else. I try to figure out why he felt threatened, what he feared, because I think the root of most bad behavior is fear. Create spaciousness for him to not be afraid. I'd try to understand where he saw the program going as we scaled and find alignment points, and would definitely continue to admire what he did well, because he did do things well and he made the program better, but also hold boundaries about what I needed to do my job well. And instead of saying, but hold boundaries, I should say, and hold boundaries. I would sum that up as, instead of retreating to a transactional mode with him, I'd keep working on the relational and not give up. I know there's a rule of 3. You're supposed to have just 3 things, so I'm going to give you 2 sets of 3. The first is to give grace. The second is to be curious, learn what drives colleagues, both personally and professionally. And the third is to build teamwork. Compete against your competitors, not against each other. And what you'll notice in any organization is that winning together solves a lot of problems and gets rid of a lot of negative behavior.
I love those 3, Sheryl, and absolutely, you can have as many as you want, but I love that you open with grace. I mean, again, isn't that one that just, I could feel my breath and I could feel my shoulders dropping the minute you said that. And the one around that you're in it together, I want to remind the audience, I'm a big fan of Amy Edmondson's work. She's known for psychological safety, but to me, the bigger one is teaming, where you're not teaming to be competitive, but you're teaming for the greater good and outcome of all.
My second 3, be fair, assume positive intent. When you go into any discussion or argument or dispute, assume that they're coming from a good place and find out what that is. And probably my favorite, play together. Off-sites, online games, ping pong, whatever it is. This is my favorite way to build deeper relationships.
I love it. And there's neuroscience behind that. is when we play, we really, release our fear part that we were just talking about with that example you gave. Imagine if there had been spaciousness to do something like that with that client, that you could really get into that playful state where you can let your guard down and just have fun. I love it. And what a lovely, full circle with your business and mountain biking. I love it.
Yeah, so let's get you out on a bike, Bobby. Let's go.
Oh gosh, you're scaring me. Thanks, Cheryl. Again, such an honor and delight. Thank you for the light and love and joy and just amazing intellect that you share with the world. May you keep shining in many ways. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me, Bobby. I appreciate you, and here's to your business.